What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to discuss with you today in regards to our area of interest that's going on in the main development region. We have a lot of new models that we need to talk to you about. We have a lot of new developments because things have really started to become a bit more interesting over the last 24 hours. So we're going to be diving into that today. I took the day off yesterday, I know, but we're back into it, and we're going to be here throughout all of September. So stay tuned for the rest of it. All right, so here's the situation that we have right here. We now have a 40% chance of development in the next 7 days, and it looks like the odds of development, the track of it has shifted further to the south and further to the west, closer towards the Lesser Antilles, which is why I'm watching out for you guys right there. And I'm not exactly putting you on notice right now, but this is something you should watch a bit more closely now than you should have a couple of days ago. And I'll go ahead and explain to you why in just a second, but here we go. This is what we have for you right here. This is the latest advisory at the time of recording this video. A tropical wave is located over the far eastern tropical Atlantic and is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear conducive for slow development of the system, and a tropical depression could form later this week or next weekend. This system is expected to move westward to west-northwestward at around 15 miles per hour across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic throughout the week, 40% in the next 7 days, 0 in the next 48 hours. Not expecting anything to really start popping off until it gets west of the Cabo Verde Islands, but the wave is now over water right here, and that splashdown effect is pretty much done, and now we have our first returns today for what's been happening, and man, we have a lot to get over and talk about. But before we do that, we're going to do some satellite analysis, and then we'll go ahead and get right into the models. Starting off with satellite imagery, we'll go ahead and go to the eastern Atlantic for you guys right here. Here's the situation that we have right here. We have more convection starting to fire off right here. It's starting to tap into some of those water temperatures right there. Already, not the most organized at this current point in time. It's definitely producing some pretty consistent convection all across the board right here, partly because it's being helped by the Intertropical Convergence Zone, or ITCZ, but also part of it too is the system starting to tap into that warm water, like I said earlier, and starting to produce its own convection already, which is pretty interesting to say the very least. And now that the entire wave is off the coast of Africa right now, and over water in moving west to the south of the Cabo Verde Islands, we kind of have an idea of what exactly may be going on. And this system is kind of, as we were looking at, a lot further to the south than what we were initially anticipating a few days ago. So it's going to be in a better environment in the long run for tropical development. Yes, it might still run into some shear, and we talked about it on stream a couple of nights ago, but ultimately the situation has changed quite a bit, and now that we're further to the south and in better conditions, the system has more time and more capital to play with the conditions. Let's go ahead and show you the water vapor imagery as well. And as you can see, already the first thing you can look at is it's in a more moist environment right now. It's going to continue to be in a more moist environment in the long run as well. And that's going to be a pretty interesting situation. Also noticing a little bit of outflow starting to kick up and head towards parts of the Cabo Verde Islands as well. If you're seeing outflow on this early in the game, you're going to want to pay attention to that as well. So that's something to watch, because what that's an indication of is an indication that at least this wave is pretty healthy, it's breathing really well, and it's definitely an indicator that, okay, if this system starts to organize, that inflow is the first, not inflow, that outflow is the first key sign of that, because with outflow, ultimately, it kind of gives you an idea of it. It kind of is a way to gauge how healthy a system is. It's kind of a way to gauge just how the system is circulating and all of that stuff as well. And that's just kind of the general gist of it right here. And if you're seeing it this early, that should tell you, hey, this is something to watch. This wave is very healthy. You're going to want to pay attention to it. Also looking at the true color as well to see where our Sahara dust is. Sahara dust is considerably further to the north than what we've seen previously right here as well. It's considerably further to the north than what we were expecting, and it's considerably further to the north than this system over here. So we are going to want to pay attention to that as well. But now we'll go ahead and get into the models because we have a lot we need to dissect with these right here. So starting off, here is your European model right here. We're going to start with the operational runs, then we'll try to get to the ensembles. When I tried loading them up last time, they weren't quite working. So we'll go ahead and kind of start with the operational runs, and then we'll go to the ensembles to see how those match. But what we've noticed over the last 24 hours, at least from what I've looked at, is the models did kind of dip a little bit due to the splashdown effect, similar to what we were talking about earlier. And now what we're noticing with this is, at least according to some of these models like the GFS, the CMC, the Icon, they are now screaming again for development, even more so than what we've noticed previously. Like, that's pretty interesting, I would say. And that was one of the scenarios we highlighted on stream where the models are screaming for something to happen, splashdown effect, it calms down for a day or so, and then it screams even more that this is going to happen. And it looks like that is the scenario we are looking at, and I'll go ahead and show you that right now. Here is the European 0Z that we can pull up for you right here. The 0Z European does have something trying to happen, but it's further to the west and it's weaker compared to the other scenarios we are looking at right here. But here's the European. This system starts to organize and develop in the central main development region. Over here, 1,010, 1,011 millibars. But look at this, guys, right here. It starts to really get yanked further to the west. Part of it, I think, is the time frame as well, because it's every 3 hours, and now it's every 6 right here. But it starts to move further to the west. Right here is a 1,009 millibar system. It starts to close itself off as it gets closer to the Lesser Antilles, but it remains relatively weak all the way until we get to that point as well. So that's a considerable shift that we're watching as well, because every single one of these models have shifted further to the west and closer towards land, and we're going to want to pay attention to that. The operational European may not be showing you much right now, but if we can go ahead and pull up the ensembles, yeah, they're not really really loaded right now. Man, okay, the GFS is definitely loaded. I'll see if the European is at this current point. Okay, every single one is loaded. So let's go ahead and go to 5 days out just to give you an idea. Yeah, this is screaming, and this is considerably further to the south. So all the Europeans' northern biased models right here, they have shifted and caved further to the south. Part of the reason for this is because there is a stronger than expected Azores/Bermuda high that's going to be driving this further to the south. That does not immediately indicate that land impacts are likely or anything like that. It just means that it's further to the south, and if that trajectory continues, if you're in the Lesser Antilles, you are going to want to watch this. So that's your situation that we have for you right here. Let's go ahead and go to 7 days out. Yeah, considerably further to the south, and there's a lot of power with some of these ensembles as well. Tropical storm strength with the majority of them, but look at this, 997, 1,002, 992, 959 right here. There's one ensemble already at major hurricane strength at this current point, and this is a sign that I really did not want to see right here. Basically, like I said earlier and multiple times in this videos, the model's screaming for development, splashdown effect happens, messes the models up, and then they start screaming even more for development, and that is the main thing I did not want to happen. And now we'll go ahead and go to 8 days out. It only exacerbates the issue even more because we're seeing a lot more power associated with these ensembles, especially further to the west. I will say the weaker ensembles keep going to the west. The stronger ones go a bit further up to the north due to the Coriolis effect and the fact that rapidly intensifying storms move further up to the north because of that fact. So that's what you have for that. Let's go ahead and go to 10 days out to sum this up. There's a bit of a spread on the models right here, but my goodness, the 0Z European right here has a lot of power associated with it, especially further to the west. 930, 940, like 964. There is a lot of pop with this run right here. 990. There's a lot more power than what we've seen previously. This is post splashdown effect. So this is something you absolutely do not want to see. There is a bit of a spread in the track, I will tell you that right now, but by and large, This is a signal that I did not want to come back to Pat's Path Predictor looking at. And if you're in the Lesser Antilles, if you're in Puerto Rico, you're going to want to watch this very, very closely because this could be a pretty interesting situation. Now we'll go ahead and show you the GFS run as well. We'll show you the GFS operational and then the ensembles right here. 12Z still loading in, but we can go ahead and show you the 0Z. I'll show the 12Z operational just for context as well to see how that's shifted. But here's the 0Z GFS, having the system organizing and developing pretty early on and then intensifying to tropical storm strength right here. And then it starts to really ramp up in intensity. It does run into some of this wind shear that we'll show you in a little bit, so it does weaken quite a bit. But then as it moves further to the west, it starts intensifying, especially as it gets closer to the southwestern Atlantic. It does start to make that turn out to sea, but by the time this happens, this is 300 plus hours, so we will want to take that with a grain of salt. But man, a significant uptrend compared to what we've seen previously a couple of days ago. So that's your operational run. Let's go ahead and show you the ensemble just for context for you right here. GFS ensembles are starting to pick up on this as well. Just a quick glance at this. A lot more is for development, a lot more power associated with it compared to the other runs that we've noticed compared to what we saw a couple of nights ago. And things are starting to get more interesting along the tropics right here because of this right here. Now we can go ahead and show you the 12Z GFS operational. The ensembles aren't fully out, but here's the 12Z GFS, having the system kind of organizing and strengthening to hurricane strength right away, actually, as it moves towards there. It starts to shift up towards the north, runs into the wind shear, and weakens to tropical depression and strength right there. But then as it moves up towards the Atlantic, makes that turn, it starts to re-strengthen to hurricane strength and then moves out to sea right there. So the GFS has been very aggressive with this right here. What they're favoring is more of development right now and then getting yanked up to the north because of Coriolis force, running into the shear, weakening, getting out of that shear, and then starting to strengthen up again. Whereas the European takes more time, has it moving further to the west, and then strengthening as it approaches land. So that is some factors that you're going to want to watch out for right here. Models are really upticking this. They're really starting to like this signal now that it's over water, and we're going to want to pay attention to this. Next one we'll show you is the Canadian run. Right here, here's the 12Z Canadian run, just to show you that this is the latest that we got, and the greatest, I would say, because the Canadian has the system organizing and strengthening. It moves further to the south, generally. Then it's 1,003. It's tropical storm strength, nearing hurricane strength, actually. This is not something we've seen before from this system with the Canadian. It does get up to potentially hurricane strength at one point, but then it starts running into some wind shear, and then starts weakening as a result. So we're going to want to pay attention to that as well. Now, lastly, we'll go ahead and show you the Icon run as well. Icon has the system starting to organize and develop right here. It gets down to up to tropical storm strength. Pressure is around 998 millibars by 5 days out right here, and gets to hurricane strength actually. And the Canadian and the Icon actually has a 961 millibar system, potentially heading towards parts of the Lesser Antilles right here if that trajectory continues. So major changes in the models right here, major upticks in all the indicators that we are seeing. And what's the now the main question that we have for you right here is, what's been driving this? Why are we seeing major upswings in the models now? Well, part of it is because it's over water and we have a better idea of what conditions it's over, but also part of it is because it's moving through better than expected conditions right now, and we'll go ahead and show you that. Starting off, we have the water temperatures. Where it's at right now is pretty solidly in 28 degrees Celsius waters right now. That's about 82 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you living in the United States and don't use the metric system. And it's going to remain over that 28 degrees Celsius waters if the European is the correct model throughout its entire journey until it gets towards the Lesser Antilles, when it starts to surge to 29, maybe 30 degrees Celsius, which is about 84 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit as well. So that is something that you're going to want to pay attention to. You're looking at the system moving through warmer than expected waters. That's the first thing that we're looking at. Looking at the ocean heat content as well. More than expected OHC, especially in the long run. And I will be honest when I tell you this, I think the reason I think, and I'm leaning toward it's the European scenario being the most likely one, especially with the ensembles, is for this reason right here. Where the water temperatures are right now, they're pretty decent at where it's at in the Eastern Atlantic, but there's not enough OHC, in my opinion, and really there's still a few areas of not so great conditions that the system needs to chug through before it starts to ramp up at this current point, and I'll show you that in just a second. But also, this is the main reason I'm leaning towards the European being the better model, mainly because of this. What you have in the Eastern Atlantic is 50 isolated areas of 50 OHC, which is pretty conducive for good development and good strengthening. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the best conditions. And as you move further to the west, you're going to be moving into better and better conditions, especially as you get closer towards the Lesser Antilles, like some of the models are forecasting. So we're going to want to pay attention to that and see how this will ultimately pan out. But by and large, it's going to be, its trajectory kind of moves it into these conditions right here. And then from then on out, it's going to start organizing faster, developing potentially quicker, and then starting to strengthen once it gets its act together finally. So that's stuff we're going to have to pay attention to. Now we'll go ahead and show you the wind shear and the moisture component. Here's what we have with the wind shear. And I think this is the biggest reason why we are seeing these increases in strengthening right here, at least according to some of these runs. Let's go ahead and pull this up. Here's what we got for you right here. Yes, there is some wind shear that is kind of hindering some of the development right now, especially to the north of it. But this may seem like, it's not going to develop right now, and it probably won't, honestly. It probably won't develop until we get towards around the central western part of the MDR. But at least in the long run, as you start moving on from this right here, yeah, the wind shear still does become a slight problem, but if this system continues to remain farther to the south of this compared to what we've seen in previous models, it's going to have no trouble developing once it gets into those better conditions, and once it starts to kind of develop outflow, what that would really do is kind of help enhance the circulation very, very quickly and allow for some decent organization to happen and take place. European is pretty interesting with its shear right here. It mainly keeps it at a bit of an angle right here, especially as it moves further to the west. That is a recipe for a pretty significant outflow channel right there. So any kind of strengthening will be emphasized by this area of wind shear as long as it stays farther to the south, like more of these models are forecasting it to. And it doesn't just run into the wind shear like the GFS has been forecasting to. So that's kind of the main reason we're seeing this intensification right here. The track is further to the south than expected, and it's more down shear than expected. So those are kind of the two main reasons that you have for this. Right here, and that remains all the way as you get towards the Lesser Antilles as well. So we're going to have to pay attention to that here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. Looking at your moisture component to all of this, it's in a pretty big pocket of moist air right now, and because it developed further to the south than what we were initially, not developed, but moved and kind of originated further to the south than what we were initially thinking, it's even deeper in that moisture pocket, and the dry air that's kind of associated with it is going to have a harder time penetrating the system, especially early on as it starts to get its act together in the main development region. It mainly stays in this moisture plume right here, and it doesn't really exit until it gets closer to the Lesser Antilles, and even then, by the time it gets to that point, it's going to start generating its own condition, and this kind of dry air can easily be mixed out right here, so that's something you're going to want to watch out for as well. And you can even see the European scenario does mix it out a little bit. Yes, there is some dry air to the south and to the west of it right here, but by and large, if we see what the GFS, the Icon, and the Canadian are forecasting with the intensities, this can be mixed out, and this can be and this system can fight back from all of this, especially if it stays south of that wind shear, because if the wind shear starts to tear at the structure, dry air could potentially penetrate into it and kind of disrupt the whole core of the system. So that's something to watch as well. But by and large, the main theme for today's kind of outlook here is conditions are better than expected, and because the system originated further to the south than anticipated, it's going to most likely take advantage of those conditions. It won't do it right away, in my opinion, but it's going to take its time to organize and develop until it gets potentially closer towards land, like some of the European scenarios are forecasting. So we're going to have to pay attention to all of these threats here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help us out, hang out with us, or ask us some questions, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. We're planning on a stream for Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, so stay tuned for that. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.